So this is another Yu-Gi-Oh Master Duel video. I know I talked like I wasn't going to make anymore. This one goes on for 16 minutes and 45 seconds. So I'm going to get into it. My life is still in flux right now, so I'm still getting that in order. But I am able to keep my schedule as is right now. As of right now, games I'm going to look at is still Marathon, despite what the press is. So there's that. I think it's in alpha or beta. They did tests and people are releasing footage and stuff and talking about it. I will not be watching any of that. I will not be partaking in any of the news or anything like that. And then to move on to my next topic real quick is I like to add stuff I see on the internet, stuff I come across that I think people might be interested in. Is ideas about people who are freelance. When someone does freelance work, from a commissioner's side, someone asking an artist to do work, or let's just say someone wanting a VTuber model get done, as people will know what I'm talking about. That you are responsible when you're commissioning any sort of artwork, or if you want your house remodeled, you're responsible for giving the reference material and then having the talk with the architect or whoever is designing the inside of your house. And if you picked a wrong architect or wrong designer, you gave them wrong reference material. Right? The time to have to talk about looking unique, because when you do any sort of things like streaming or anything like that, you're a peacock. You want a peacock, right? You want to stick out. You want to show your plumage. And the best example I have is VTubers. It's like what is it? It's clothing. It's like someone designing clothing, right? You would Louis Vuitton wouldn't take a jacket from Carhartt and then slap Louis Vuitton logos all over. They might, but if someone confuses a Louis Vuitton jacket for a Carhartt jacket or for some like a boiler suit, then wouldn't you say that is Louis Vuitton's fault, not Carhartt or whoever made that outfit? It's the same thing. When you are spending that amount of money that it takes to make a 3D model or just a 2D model in drawing time and in rigging, you better know what you want. And the time to complain about people not being interested in you because someone else looks like you means you didn't do the research, right? You didn't take your job and your brand seriously enough to have yourself be your own mascot, right? It's like if you design clothing, you want to wear your own clothing because it's like you're putting your name on the clothes. Rolls-Royce is the same way. The old luxury car companies were the same way. The Rolls-Royce brothers put their two first names on the badge, and that was their mark of standards. Like, hey, we're putting ourselves out there. You can hate us or you can love us. It's the same thing with that, and asking, basically using your money to manipulate someone you are commissioning doesn't go down well, right? So unless you can make your own art, unless you can draw, unless you can 3D model, it's not a good idea to piss off the relatively small community of people who can do it by trying to manipulate them. Unless you have some sort of contract, in which case I'd say that's on the freelancers. That's freelancers' fault, right? Freelancer or anything. If you're an LLC, if you're a small company, if you're, making an agreed upon amount, let's say whiskey bottles, right? If someone wants these bespoke whiskey bottles and they come to this bottling plant or wherever they make it, like, hey, can you make this bottling design within this time limit for this price? And then something happens. Let's say tariffs happen, and now the bottling plant has to spend more money than they agreed on. They could go back to the customer, or they could swallow it and go with the design, right? So if you want to lock someone into a contract, then it is completely reasonable to be upset that someone is working with someone else, right? Be it VTubing or whatever, any sort of idea. Like if you have a contractor come in your house and you pay them money to remodel your house, and then you see them down the road taking your materials down the road, fixing someone else's house, and it's like you ask them, it's like, hey, well, they paid me as well, and they're using your material, right? Like there's so many like of the same design, right? Same face syndrome in art. It's like someone draws. You could draw really good backgrounds. You could draw really good buildings, but then it's like any sort of character eye looks sort of like the one looks like, it's like that's that could be the commissioners. There's a lot of people that could be at fault, but either way, unless you have a contract, and then you better be looking at that with a lawyer, right? A lawyer needs to be added into the business expenses when you're doing freelance work with a contract. And I am not saying this as someone who did freelance work. I did do labor contracting for a while, and it's sort of the same. You have timesheets. I sort of have a contract, but I am responsible for working the hours that I work and agreeing on the money that I'm paid for. If I work more and feel like I'm not paid as much, that's on me, right? As a construction contractor, I'm an independent. Same thing with art, same thing with modeling, anything like that, right? It takes months, if not weeks, to model, to rig. Something may come up, someone may get sick, you may have to talk to someone else, but either way, from a customer standpoint, if you're going to spend something that's roughly the down payment of a car, which is, how expensive it can get to get a model, you better know what you want, right? So, the time to say, hey, I want to change things is not after. You're going to be paying more money because the commission's already done. And so now you're off the schedule. You're off the schedule for that, and then someone else has moved in. It's not right to the person who's doing that work and the people who are behind you to then cut in front of them and then say, hey, I don't want you to work with other people. Don't want people to work with other people. You're trying to have someone not take commissions, contract them, right? You have to figure in, well, okay, if I'm doing this, then I need to take into account living expenses, bills, any sort of stuff I might need, electricity to run all of this, because it's all digital. They're not making sculptures, unless they 3D print this stuff. And so now you're dealing with, you are paying now for the editor or the sound designer or any sort of engineer of any kind. You're paying for their downtime, not just the agreed upon work, which is why unless you have a lot of money, you shouldn't do that. And then a side note, it does seem like a thing with streamers. It's sort of like called moneyitis, where they just sort of like get money brained, right? Like the Island Boys and the Paul brothers. It's like they may seem like they're doing fine for a while, but eventually they will age out, right? They will age out, which is what happened with a lot of early YouTubers. They aged out and it didn't go well. And they don't do well with their money, or people who waste all their money on gotcha. And they don't do the thing of like doing it on stream or doing card openings on stream and having a tax write-offs, right? It's people who become popular too young and don't learn everything else that come with it. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying this is part of the thing I'm putting out there, that now you have these people who have all this money, and it's like, well, I could just, I don't need to negotiate, right? Most people are willing to negotiate, especially when you're doing any sort of contracting or any sort of laboring. It's like you want to aim high, right? I think a good thing would be to teach market houses and MMOs to kids, because you have to actually think about what the market's going to handle, and then what you think it's worth, what your time is worth. It's almost like you're actually learning how to write a contract. And then at the end of the day, if you don't price that well, or someone's willing to undercut you, then you're going to have to either be willing to bump it down, in which case you can't go back up, or you have to be willing to wait. To hope that someone's going to come along, that the market's going to dry up, right? And someone's going to come along and snatch it up, like a lot of real estate investments do. They snatch up places, they have to eat the rent. They have to eat all these things, but taking care of it so they can sell it right away. And then they have to hope when the market dries up, they can then sell it at a higher price, and they can make if not break even. And I have talked to some 3D modelers and artists about like when I was looking into this myself personally, is it can be quite expensive, but they are willing to work with you, right? Some of them are willing to do payment plans, which I think are it's incredibly trusting. And some are even willing to they're willing to do discounts if you agree to do future work with them, right? Or something. There's something you can work out, but it always costs money because they have to feed themselves, and that's what it is. It's like these are people; they have to feed themselves. If you want to get your model made by an AI, people will find that shit out. People have autism on the internet; they'll find anything out. People don't like AI right now at all, especially when it comes to art. So, and people, it happens. Sometimes you see things, AI art, and I wonder what it's like with a 3D artist. It's like, hey, I drew that. That's a piece of a picture I spent hours on. And yeah, AI art's going to go well on a small side note. Like it's I don't agree too much on the environmental stuff, but it's the one thing I'm glad about. Like people are looking at it that aspect. You're trying to kill it, and that part is like, well, this costs too much energy to run, right? Too much energy at once. It's too straining on the power grid or whatever. And I think that's a good way to go after it, right? AI art doesn't really add anything, unless you can be certain somehow that the artist is actually using the art and fixing it. Like using it as sort of like, I want the base idea. It's like instead of doing the underlying sketch themselves, where they do the structure sketch, they're like, I'm going to have the AI do the structure sketch, and then I'm going to then go in and change it to be the way I want, right? And if you change it enough, you change the poses enough and stuff in the background, then it is no longer the art that it started with, right? So it's no longer AI art. I would say that at some points, like the ship of Theseus, you replace enough ship parts, it's not the same boat anymore. It started out as AI artwork, but if its intention is not to be posted as such, is to be something else, then yeah, go at it. But as far as like modeling goes, there are a lot of people that are teaching themselves. I say if you want to get a 3D model, teach yourself. Most people, let's be honest, if they're looking at a 3D model, have everything they need to teach themselves modeling. If you have the money, if you're even able to think about spending that amount of money, even if you get a deal, you have everything you need, right? Or you're at least willing to business expense it and then hope to God you make it back, right? Because that's, I know I'm getting in the weeds, but that's sort of like part of everything that comes into this. That it's as a business, it's just not, I'm going to do streaming, hang out with people, and then become a VTuber. That's money you're not making from a job, so that's not assured income. And then that's time, energy, food, and then something that's the price of a small car, or a community college tuition. That's probably cheaper than that actually. So you can learn to trade for some of the prices these models go for. I'm just saying that's in America. In America, those are the prices you're dealing with. At least in community college, but yeah, you don't get to say someone blacklist. And if you're an artist or you're some sort of person working freelance and you don't have a contract with someone and you are willing to blacklist someone, then you're not a professional. It doesn't matter if you like someone or not. It doesn't matter how repugnant you find them. These are people who are willing to pay you money, right? And artists, I'm going to say this, aren't necessary. They're not needed. They're liked. They're not needed. So, with things the way they are in the economy, how much can these people actually afford to pick sides, right? Sign a contract and stop treating social media like it's high school. Stop being the same way all the big streamers on Twitch, like, you know, Hassan and that group, treat it like the popularity table at high school. It's the same shit. You are a freelance. That's the last I'm going to say. A freelance person, whatever, in an already niche market where people are learning how to make their own models. Right? So it is not a good idea to publicly take sides when two people who could be commissioners. If people are wanting commissions, if two people are having beef, like, hey, you know, you want to look different than that person? I'm open. I'll work with you. You want to look different than that other person? I'll work with you. You know, do what America does. Two countries are at war, we'll sell you weapons. You know, you're going to fight each other anyway. Here you go. Here's the arsenal. Pay us for it. Anyway, yeah, it's just ridiculous, pathetic. The lack of brand intuition when it comes to this shit. Like, and this isn't new. Like, it's been happening so many times. Like, surely someone is going to figure it out. Surely this doesn't need to happen anymore. Like, no, it will keep happening, and people will keep, for some reason, being, you know, what's the word? Being surprised by it. I'm sure they do it for content, which is whatever, but like genuine surprise, I think we're past that point. Anyway, I will attempt to do timestamps, and thanks for watching and have a good day.